The Kashmiri Pandit community is the indigenous Hindu population of Kashmir, a beautiful valley within the Himalayas. In 1990, due to Islamist militancy and targeted violence, over 400,000 Pandits were forced to flee their ancestral homes. This is not the first time they were expelled from their homeland. The Kashmiri Pandit community has endured at least 7 exoduses over centuries, marked by persecution, forced conversions, and violence. After fleeing, many Pandits lived in overcrowded camps in Jammu, often in harsh and unsanitary conditions. To this day, 35 years later, thousands of Kashmiri Pandits remain permanently displaced, residing in refugee camps in Jammu. Returning to Kashmir is a distant thought, as any return to Kashmir risks significant security concerns. Pandits in the diaspora, such as those speaking today, continue to advocate for the preservation of Kashmiri Pandit culture while educating others about the repeated displacement and erasure. Our event today will consist of a keynote speech by UC Berkeley alum Kaul, followed by a panel discussion by leaders of the Kashmiri Pandit community in the Bay Area, as well as on Kashmiri Pandit culture and the 1990 Exodus. Drew, our keynote speaker today, graduated from UC Berkeley in 2021, Go Bears, where he studied electrical engineering and computer science. He's been a passionate advocate for the Kashmiri Pandit community, serving as a member of KOA Youth, the Kashmiri Overseas Association's youth organization, and Drew will share a personal story today about a thread, a homeland, and a spirit that endures. Please welcome Drew.
Once upon a time, a king and queen lived happily together in their kingdom. Every year, during the festival of the Mother Goddess, the queen would tie a special thread around her ear. One year, during this very festival, the king and queen sat together to play a game of chess. Now, the queen was very clever, and the king had never once managed to beat her. This day would prove no different. The king, upset that he had lost, began to grow suspicious and happened to notice that special thread around the queen's ear. "What is that thread you wear?" the king asked. To which the queen replied, "It's worn to honor the goddess during her festival." "You must take it off. It's some kind of witchcraft. This is why I lose every game." The queen pleaded with the king to not disrespect the puja, or offering. But after losing yet another game, the king, in a fit of rage, tore the sacred thread, and in an instant, shattered the bond between the kingdom and the goddess. Following this, bad fortune befell the realm. The king was captured by enemy forces, and the queen and her young daughter fled to the forest. For years they lived there modestly, begging for alms to survive. The queen's faith, though tested, never once wavered. And finally, after many years, she decided that they would celebrate the festival of the goddess once again. So using all of the money they had tirelessly earned, the queen and the princess prepared the rot, a special golden cookie made from ghee and flour, and offered it to the goddess. But exhausted from their preparations, they both fell asleep before they could complete the puja. When they awoke, they were met with a miracle. The rot had transformed into pure gold. The goddess had accepted their devotion and bestowed her blessing upon them once more. On that same day, the king broke free from his prison. He rallied his forces, reclaimed the kingdom, and reunited with his wife and daughter. From that day onwards, the three always celebrated the festival of the goddess and tied the thread. The goddess's blessing brought lasting joy to their family and peace to their kingdom. And so they lived, happily ever after. That, my friends, is the legendary tale of Pan, one of our most cherished festivals as Kashmiri Pandits, and one whose name quite literally means thread. The thread that the queen wore around her ear wasn't just a ritual, but a symbol of devotion, of resilience, and most of all, of connection. The deep connection both physically and spiritually, between Kashmiri Pandits and Kashmir, our homeland for millennia. And for me, that thread has always been my mother. Every year, she's sitting right there. Every year, around the time of Pan, my mom would tell me this exact story while we sat around the kitchen table, with her hands dusted in flour and her heart full of memories. She would make the roti, and I would mostly eat it. But it was through her stories that I learned about our home. My mom would tell me about Kashmir's unparalleled beauty, with its snow-capped mountains and crystal blue lakes, about the pious devotees who offered milk and kheer to the goddess Kheer Bhavani, who was said to protect the valley, and about the fond memories that defined her childhood there. But something never felt quite right when she told me these stories. It was in her eyes, the wistful gaze into the distance as she reminisced, in the small quivers in her voice as she spoke, and in the unspoken longing that underlay her words. So I simply asked her, why don't we go back to Kashmir? She demurred, saying that someday I would understand. That day would come much later than I expected, specifically on March 11th, 2022, the premiere of the Kashmir Files, a film depicting the events of the 1990 exodus of Kashmiri Pandits. Now, I was generally aware of the 1990 exodus, that our community was forced to flee Kashmir Valley under threats of violence and death. What I didn't fully understand was that this exodus wasn't just displacement. It was part of a larger, systematic genocide of the Kashmiri Pandit people. As I watched a barrage of unspeakable horrors unfold in front of my eyes, one after another, I could only sit back helplessly in complete and utter shock. Just then, I felt a small, feeble hand suddenly grasp my palm. Trembling with fear, my dadi held on to me tightly as the atrocities continued to rampage on screen. In just 7 minutes, I would witness a genocide that is unfolded over 7 generations, marked by 7 waves of exodus, each more brutal than the last, and reaching its horrific peak in January of 1990. And in that moment, my spirit broke. I cried, feeling the tears roll down my dadi's face as she sobbed uncontrollably into my shoulder. I cried, hearing the chants Yaliv Galiv Taliv, a call for Kashmiri Pandits to convert to Islam, die, or flee, blare throughout the valley. I cried, seeing the 11 men, the 11 women, and the 2 small young boys lined up and shot point blank in the 2003 Nandi Marg massacre. I cried. In agony, in disgust, in sheer terror, witnessing the utterly inhumane slaughter of Girja Tikku, an innocent woman who was savagely beaten and raped before being sawed in half. I cried as I watched the flame and spirit of a proud and vibrant people being violently snuffed out. And finally, after all my tears had run dry, I cried once more for the family members of my own Kashmiri community back home. Because even if we were not related, they were my family too. In just 2 hours and 50 minutes, I had witnessed the knife that severed the thread between Kashmiri Pandits and Kashmir, exiling them from their one and only home. I stand here before you as someone who was born in this country, as someone who struggles to speak my native tongue, as someone who has never and may never be able to step foot in my homeland. And yet, I find that when I open up my heart and peer into the depths of my soul, the essence of who I am, what truly makes me, me, is Kashmir. Kashmir lives in all the days that I would spend helping my mom clean the house for Ban. Kashmir lives in the Navrital that I would wake up to every Kashmiri New Year. Kashmir lives in the prayers that I would recite at home every week, in the bhajans that I would sing along to at every puja, in all the gatherings that I would ask every auntie, Varichav? Meaning, how are you? Despite not understanding a word of what they would reply back. Kashmir even lives in the mouth-watering Rogan Josh, salmon, and mutts that my mom would make for me while I was a student at this very school. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can almost picture the house my family left behind, as if I've been there myself. I see the two large wooden frame buildings resting peacefully along the tranquil waters of the Tsuntqual.
Yeah.
From the balcony, I hear the gentle murmur of the vegetable vendors drifting in their canoes. I then walk through the garden, watching as the serene outline of the Shankaracharya temple fades slowly into the horizon. And finally, I rest under the tall pomegranate tree by our kitchen window, feeling the gentle flutter in the air as the butterflies dance through its branches. I've never seen this place with my own eyes, and yet somehow, I know it like a memory. Kashmir lives on in the deep and unwavering sense of pride I feel as a Kashmiri. I'm a computer scientist by training. I understand how to analyze data, discover patterns, and create models. But when I think about my community, I find that only one explanation suffices. Miracles. A people who have endured unfathomable suffering. A people who have faced the near eradication of their culture. A people who have been exiled from their homeland. And yet, still come together to celebrate their ancient traditions and to preserve their ancestral Kashmiri language at the heart of their identity. Because with every pun celebrated, every rote made, and every thread worn, whether 200 feet or 2,000 miles away, the spirit of Kashmir is renewed. And in doing so, defying reason, defying imagination, defying even the laws of nature itself, the thread that was once severed starts to become whole again. The ashes of the flame, once extinguished, begin to burn brightly. And the light it emanates carries forth with it the knowledge, the spirit, and the cultural legacy of the Kashmiri people. It is perhaps only fitting then that I stand here before you, speaking at my alma mater, UC Berkeley, where the motto, Fiat Lux, meaning let there be light, radiates through every hall of this storied institution. A place where the light of scientific discovery, of innovation, of leadership, of freedom, and of justice, has illuminated the far reaches of the globe and sparked intellectual advancement. In fact, it reminds me of an ancient kingdom in a beautiful valley, which, once upon a time, through its scholarly ideas, its literature, its sciences, its mathematics, and its spirituality enlightened not only India, but the entire world. I hope you leave today with not only a better understanding of Kashmir's past, but a shared hope for its future. And I hope that you too will help us keep that thread alive, that sacred connection between Kashmiri Pandits and our culture, our heritage, and our homeland Kashmir, for countless generations to follow. Thank you.
Our first speaker, Mr. Jeevan Zutshi, serves as a founding member of Kashmiri Overseas Association and the Indo-American Community Federation. Jeevan Ji led 2 delegations to the Jammu and Kashmir camps in 1994 and 1996. In the early 2000s, he convened several international symposiums on Kashmir and the 1990 Kashmiri Pandits, involving politicians such as Senator Sherrod Brown, Senator John Edwards, and congressional representatives Frank Pallone and Anna Issue, in finding a peaceful solution to the Kashmir problem. Please welcome Mr. Jeevan Zutshi. Next is Amrita, former secretary of the Kashmiri Overseas Association and a passionate voice in the Kashmiri Pandit community. Amrita ji has written extensively about her experiences in Kashmir prior to the exodus, as well as her forced exile at the age of 4 years old. She recently had the opportunity to visit Kashmir, her homeland, for 4 days in 2020, after the abrogation of Article 370. Please welcome Amrita. Last, Uphaar Kotru serves as the president of the Kashmiri Overseas Association and is an active advocate for the Kashmiri Pandit community. Uphaar ji grew up in Srinagar, the capital of Kashmir, in the 1980s. As the son of an IAS officer who served in the J&K administration, he and his family were forced to flee from Kashmir for Jammu in 1990 due to the increasing military insurgency. Please welcome Uphaar Kotru. Regarding the structure of the panel, the first part of the panel will focus on growing up in Kashmir and Kashmiri culture, and then the second part of the panel will discuss the 1990 genocide, and the final part of the panel will discuss the way forward for Kashmiri Pandits. Let's begin with our first question. And this question is for all 3 speakers. We can start with Jeevan ji. All 3 of you grew up or spent significant time in Kashmir prior to the 1990 exodus. What was it like living in Kashmir? And are there any particular fond memories in Kashmir that you hold especially dear?
It was a beautiful, wonderful time we had in Kashmir. As old as I am, those days, things were very, very good, very normal. And the fondest memory, I have to think which one is my fondest memory, but I can tell you. Going up, with my grandfather, early morning, I used to go with him to Hari Parbat. There's a Sharika temple. And it's very historic, it's very beautiful, it's way up in the hill there, and you have to hike, basically, you have to go up there. So it was something that I couldn't forget ever, especially after everything changed and Kashmir, kind of went out of our hand and we couldn't go frequently, couldn't travel after 1990. So it really became a memory where you would always cherish it. So...
Firstly, thanks for having me here, and thanks to everyone for coming. So as Aryan said that, I was very little when I was in Kashmir. So I have snapshots of memories. I like, the fondest memory would be like my grandfather meditating, and he would, in Kashmir it says Bibistal town, as in he would cuddle me, and he would meditate, and there would be a cat on his other lap. And I have this snapshot of him meditating, and there's like a snowfall happening, and I'm like looking at the window, and it's like a slanted snowfall. And so I think that memory is very fond for me. And the other one, if I may add, is just before we left, we had to leave Kashmir. We had constructed a new house, and we were flying kites with my sister and I, with my dad. And when it went all the way up, and I had the string of the kite, and it was at the end of it, and then it just went away. I didn't realize, and it just went away. And I told my dad, like, catch it, and he was like, no, let it go. So that's fun for me.
Thank you so much, and thanks, Aryan, and thank you, Drew, for such a beautiful opening, and thank you, everybody, for taking out time on a Sunday to hear us out. So in terms of my childhood memories, I spent my early childhood in Kashmir, and those are the strongest and fondest memories, and that's what actually shapes you. And I grew up in a house which I only recently realized I was the 7th generation who was living in that house. So it was a house which was maybe built 250 years ago, and my strongest memories are from that home. And you know, I've lived across many homes after that, but you still crave for that home where I grew and where my ancestors grew across generations. I think that's one very strong and fondest part of Kashmir for me. And the other part is the social fabric that we had there. My extended families, right? My paternal side, my maternal side, my cousins, I grew up, and I feel so fortunate that I had that opportunity. I feel really sad for, this generation like my kids, because we got dispersed all over the place. So it was never the same. So I really sort of, thank for having those early on years with my extended clan. And I think those are the two aspects. And obviously not to mention about our places of worship where we would get together and have built some very memorable memories. Yep.
Now that we've spoken a little bit about your experiences growing up in Kashmir, I'd like to dive into a little bit more about Kashmiri heritage and cultural traditions. Amrita ji, is there any attire that distinguishes Kashmiri Hindus from others? And can you explain the significance in Kashmiri culture?
So I'm trying to look around to see if somebody has worn Kashmiri stuff. So yeah, there's Subhi there. If she would like to stand, there's what she's wearing, the Athor Deshor. That is very Kashmiri. It's what a married woman would wear. And I can tell a little bit more about it in a bit. And of course, thanks Subhi. What Usha ji is wearing, she is wearing an embroidered sari, which is hand embroidered. It's called Sonzani. So, this is something of that I'm seeing in the audience, and I thought I would share. But otherwise, if you would like to distinguish a Kashmiri person, let's say in Kashmir, who is a Pandit, I would say they would be wearing a ferin, but there is a very distinct kind of, for a Kashmiri Pandit, there would be like a white kind of a border at the sleeve. There would be like a stitch, like a fold in the front. And they would wear a tilak, a bindi or a tilak, and the men would wear a safa, kind of a pagdi. It's called a safa. So I would say that's how you would differentiate between like a Kashmiri Pandit and other Kashmiris in Kashmir. But yeah, I mean, the very strong part of Kashmir is Shaivism and, its spiritual, ties. And I say this a lot, and I'll repeat it, like, how, we would go to Paris, and everybody is an artist there. Everybody wants to be a painter, right? And I think it just runs in the blood in Paris. But in Kashmir, similarly, there is something like everybody is spiritual in one way or the other. You kind of carry it forward in your generation, and everybody is trying to transcend, or, and so am I at this point. I've gotten so involved in, like reading more about Shaivism. So it's amazing. And the de jure, actually, the shape of it, you saw the earring that she was wearing. It comes from this part of the conch of your ear, and it's representative of the union of Shiv and Shakti. And the shape at the end of the pendant kind of a thing, it's kind of hexagonal. And, it's very interesting because Kashmir Shaivism believes that you don't have to give up everything. It can, you can transcend in your own, household. You don't have to go to the Himalayas and like leave everybody. But as a daily practice, you can transcend, you can be spiritual, and that de jure is symbolic of it. And it actually comes from a Shri Yantra. So there might be a lot of Hindus here who know what Shri Yantra is, and if you don't, it's plenty of stuff available on the internet. And it is in that shape. So sorry if I digressed, but I wanted to really mention that. And so what I wanted to say is that, Kashmir, the culture is very spiritual and very Hindu, of course.
This Thank you. Next,
I thought it is.
I want to transition to the 1990 time period when the 7th Kashmiri Pandit exodus began. As briefly discussed in the opening remarks, 1990 was not the first exodus or genocide of Kashmiri Pandits. It was the 7th, following hundreds of years of colonialism beginning from as early as the 14th century, which gradually rendered the Hindu population a minority in their homeland. During the insurgency, hundreds of thousands of Kashmiri Pandits fled their homes, including our speakers here. And I want to start with Jeevan. What was the situation like leading up to the 1990 exodus of Kashmir?
Well, it's a culmination of, it has been happening very gradually. Things were building up, the extremism, religious bigotry. It has been slowly building up after 1947. And, as you all understand, Pakistan had this huge burden on them that, they couldn't have Kashmir. So they were trying whichever way they could create problems for India, especially in that area. So it was all this, indoctrination and madrasas, and, things were gradually building up. But, it took time before that really came on the surface. And I think it was 1987 when there were some elections and stuff, and even the government of India, the state government, they were all responsible for, basically messing everything up. And that's the time when they took this opportunity of basically, creating this huge mayhem, and had it built up to basically, to 1990, when you had all this unfortunate happening. But it had been gradually building up. It was not something that suddenly happened. But people were unaware. People wouldn't really know what was going on. I mean, I was a student in the engineering college there, and whenever there was a cricket match and Pakistan would lose or win or whatever, it didn't matter. There would be a problem. And I remember one time they burnt our dormitories. We were completely without books, without notes, without anything. And it was terrible. Just because there was a cricket match and somebody didn't win. So that was the time, actually. It was, late 60s when they had a stronghold of, basically they had planted, a lot of these madrasas and all those things were happening underground, and nobody realized. And even the teachers in our engineering college, they were coming from, Lucknow, or some areas where you would suddenly wonder, like, where are they coming from? Where are they coming from there? But it was a concerted effort. And like I'm sure everyone knows about Ziaul Haq and his that plan that haven't been able to win a war. They tried so many times, but they could not win it. And then finally they thought that the best way is to use religion, and they were successful. They had these madrasas and underground things were happening, and the youth, they were disgruntled after 1987 when the elections were very ugly. So they basically made use of them, and unfortunately, it led to our annihilation of Kashmiri Pandits, innocent people who had absolutely nothing to do with the whole thing. I mean, they were all teachers, doctors, professors. They were, educated people, and they were just unfortunately, they were thrown out.
So Parji, as Kashmiri Pandits who were in Kashmir at the time of the 1990 exodus, what can you tell me about your experience during that time?
Sure, just building up on what UNG was talking about, the events that led to, like, I grew up in 1980s, that was my childhood, and that there was already an environment where there was hostility towards Hindus. I mean, ours was the only house in the entire neighborhood which was a Hindu home. And being bullied was very usual to us. It was only now that I reflect, I said that was not normal. I mean, because at that time, that's the only thing that I knew, but we were bullied. We were under constant hostility. And I think the tipping point was September 14th, 1989, where one of our tallest leaders, Shri Tikalal Tepluji, he was killed in point blank. He was actually my grandfather's first cousin, so he was my dad's uncle, and we would go to their home every now and then. And I remember when he was shot, he was not shot by some unknown people. These were people who knew him. These were people who knew his daily routine, and they killed him point blank right outside his house. And I remember the bullet marks outside their home when we visited them. I was in that procession. So that was sort of the first, and then a series of prominent Kashmiri Pandits were killed, and which eventually led to the mass exodus on 19th January 1990. And for us specifically, winter break used to be in Kashmir in November, December time frame, and we would typically go to Jammu to our grandparents' house, and that's what we did that winter as well, 1989. So I remember my mom had sort of ironed the school uniform that, hey, we're going for a winter break and we'll be back in a couple of months, and then, life will be as usual, but that never happened. So we never went back. And it was only, I think, a couple of years after that event, 1992, our house was looted first, and then it was burned down. And this happened to a lot of the Kashmiri Hindu properties. They were just looted and then burned down. And eventually people were forced to sell those properties, those multi-generational properties at sort of throwaway price. So a series of distress selling happened, which happened to our house as well. So within a very short span of time, the connection to that, the thread that, a unbroken thread of, hundreds of years of, generations was broken. So yeah, I mean, that's my recollection. And then coming to Jammu, it was altogether a different struggle. Like, how for many months, we didn't have that realization, hey, we're not going back. So a lot of the kids suffered for education. Obviously, the economic level, the social level, it just, broke the social fabric, the economic fabric. And obviously, justice has been elusive ever since.
Thank you, Parj, for that. Amrita ji, in a 2020 article you contributed to with India Currents, you wrote about your first visit to Kashmir in over 30 years. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that trip was after we left for the first time, and it was a difficult one. And it started off the idea of it started with the abrogation of Article 370, and maybe I had written a poem which I should probably read out at that time, which probably gives more context, if that's okay. Okay, because what happened is that one of the major things for our family with Article 370 was that my sister, my older sister, she's married to a non-Kashmiri. Okay, so that meant that she could not own a proper property or land in Kashmir, her homeland. She cannot. So that was something that was cancelled after the Article 370 was abrogated. And if people don't know about it, it's like a special clause in the Constitution of India which gives special rights to Kashmir at that time, so they could have their own kind of a constitution, like just simplifying things. So that involved this. So then when that was abrogated, my sister called. She's like so happy, and then I took a day off and I kind of sat down and I wrote this poem, and I was the secretary of KOA at that time. And we had a conference, and there was a lot going on, and there was a lot of hope. And subsequently in 2020, the KOA president told me, she's like, you have to go to your homeland and visit the place you're fighting for. And that's why I went. And she went there before me. She booked my ticket. I had not planned it. And she received me and took me around. And I was super afraid, like it is written in that article. And but I left with longing to live there and go back there. And for a year, it took me a year and the entire COVID to get over it. But I'll just stop here, and I probably just read the poem, and then maybe I'll tell you what happened after later on. Okay, it's dated October 16th, 2019. So the abrogation happened around in August 5th, 2019. It's called It's Time for Kashmir. 30 years. It's time for equality. It's time for democracy. It's time for Kashmir. These were my first lines the morning of August 5th. There was a sense of freedom and hope, a new energy almost. I'm getting a babysitter, my sister from India said. Mom, Dad are moving back to Kashmir. I took a day off from work to process my overwhelming feelings. Yes, it had been 30 years. I still remember watching the snow fall from the window, sitting on my grandfather's lap, deep in meditation, opening the back door of our 6-month-old house for the fresh breeze and the smell of wet mud. Picnics in Hirvan every Sunday, flying kites with my dad and sister in the blue skies, stealthily eating fresh snow off the sills of the large French windows. The same French windows of the house we refused to leave in January 1990 now was surrounded on an afternoon of February in the absence of my dad by many Muslim teenage boys with large sticks in their hands banging loudly. Mom forced us into a corner squished together, I, my sister, and her. Standing still, terrorized, not breathing, not making a sound. It seemed like an eternity. I cannot forget those windows shuddering, while I shut my eyes and wish it would go away. We received life threats the same night. I find myself walking up the aisle now, popping my ears. I was on a plane with my family. Obviously, it was vacation time, I said to myself. Little did I know we were never to return home. Home. Crushed ice from the fridge was the new snow from the windowsill. Cockroaches, mice in 10 by 10 square foot room with torn bed sheets was home now. Home was the unfounded fear and racing heart of walking by a green jeep. In a safe city away from terror, fearing it would explode and burn. Home was never speaking about the past. Past like it never existed. Home, however, was not stone pelting at the first instance of a threat. It was love, respect, education, and strong values instilled at home. Home was not hatred for the Muslims, which would only be natural, but lessons of equality, justice, democracy, and secularism. Was not a thought of picking up a gun and shooting at somebody. It was family, friends, community, service, and kindness. Home, above all, was patience. But today, it's their turn to be patient. For us, it's time for home. It's time for Kashmir.
Uphaar, I see that you brought with yourself that little pamphlet about Kashmir Files, so I'm going to ask you a question about Kashmir Files, then Jeevan as well, if you could answer. In March 2022, the movie Kashmir Files came out. Kashmir Files was an eye-opener for a lot of Indians, and especially Hindus, who knew little about the history of Kashmiri Pandits. It also struck a deep emotional chord with the audiences, especially younger folks, such as myself, as it depicted the horrors of the 1990 genocide and exodus in visceral detail. Uphaar, what are your takeaways from the movie, and what are your thoughts? What did you mention?
But the Kashmir Files, as now millions of Indians, they all know about it, and anyone else outside India, they know about Kashmir, Kashmiri Pandits, the genocide, the exodus. I think it did a wonderful job of doing that. It was real, it was true. And I had the good fortune of being part of the organization, Global Kashmiri Pandit Diaspora, GKPD, and one of the founders had convinced Vivek Agnihotri to make a movie on the Kashmiri Pandit exodus, and he listened to him, and the movie came to existence. and we screened it here in California. And I can tell you in very simple, just a few words, I'll tell you what it did. My neighbor, I have been involved with Kashmir, forever. So my neighbors, everyone, they knew that, that there's a problem in Kashmir, and, there's a lot of activity, symposiums, and as earlier was said. And my neighbor, when he saw the movie, he told me, Jeevanji, I didn't really know that this has happened to Kashmiri Pandits. And I looked at him and I was shocked. I said, we have been neighbors for 27, 28 years. And they all know that this guy has nothing else to do, but he's always, doing all this activity related to Kashmir, and he doesn't know. And that is what Kashmir Files did. It's unfortunate because there was complete, total lack of apathy from the government, from anyone else that you can think of. Otherwise, such a huge tragedy, and nobody knows about it. I mean, why? Why wouldn't they know about something like this? After all, Kashmir is part of India, and Kashmiris, they're Indians. And why wouldn't a fellow Indian, why wouldn't they know about it? It's not that they didn't care. It's not that they didn't really, but it's just that the media, they were silent. Everyone was silent. There was never any publicity about, what's going on to these poor, folks who had to flee overnight and who are living in those, tents which don't even have a roof on top of them. I mean, the rain and everything. Snake bites. How many people perished? How many people died? And you all, whoever has seen the Kashmir Files, it showed that exactly as it happened. And I was actually shocked when I saw Kashmir Files myself. I said, my God, this is exactly what has happened. So I think that's what it did, even though there were some people who thought that it was a propaganda stuff, it was this stuff, it was that stuff. But that's not really true. This is exactly what had happened in Kashmir. And Kashmir Files, kudos to, Vivek Agnihotri and Global Kashmiri Pandit Diaspora, GKPD, who were able to really work very, very hard. Very hard to screen it and to let people, see it and see it firsthand what had happened to, this community. Thank you.
Good.
Just to add a few points. Actually, I was in that premiere that happened when Pallavi ji and Vivek ji were there, and I watched that movie. And I said, nobody's going to care. I thought that nobody's going to watch this movie. It's going to be the biggest flop ever because, waking the consciousness of people, does it need a movie to do that? I thought, we were like, Jeevan ji has been working for the last 30 years trying to raise awareness. So that was my instant reaction. But I'm so happy that I was so wrong, a few months back when it came to the mainstream box offices, and, it was amazing. It was so healing to see, what that movie did. And to Jeevan ji's point, making that reference, hey, it's an agenda movie and it's a propaganda movie. It's so painful and heartbreaking to even refer that, because we can tell you first-hand witnesses of many of those events, like Girja Tikku. Girja Tikku's first cousin, he lives here in New York, right? We know him, and he had never spoken about what happened to our sister. Not even his own child knew about Girja Tikku being her bua.
Yeah.
And it was only when Kashmir Files happened, people like him, he started opening up. Saranand Kaul Premi, the movie, I don't know how many people have watched that movie. right? For all those who have watched, you remember that Sawant and Kaul and his son, they were hanged on a tree. It's again factual. The massacre that happened, multiple massacres. One Nama was one of them. I think they had depicted one Nama. That massacre was real. I mean, all of these, they were fictional characters in the movie, but each and every event, PK Ganju, who was hiding in the rice drum, again, we know in the community who are related to that person. And even the characters of like Bitta Karate and Yasin Malik, who have on record said that, hey, we've killed people. They're roaming free. Those were the characters which are fictionalized and put in the movie. But movie 100%, if you ask us as the first-hand witnesses of those events, we can tell you this is absolutely based on true events. So, thank you. And if anybody has any questions, if anybody has any further questions, there's a scene-by-scene depiction, character-by-character depiction in this printout. So please talk to me after the session is over.
And yeah, it's good that the mic is coming through me, so I'm going to just hijack it a little bit here. But if you haven't watched the movie and if it's not readily available for you to watch, the book Our Moon Has Blood Clots by Rahul Pandita, available everywhere, Amazon, Kindle, etc. It basically was released much before the movie was, and it wasn't very popular, and then its sales picked up as a result of the movie. But it's a very accurate depiction of what happened in Kashmir and he's a journalist, Rahul Pandita. So another way of getting to know about a trust.
And if you use the Fire TV, it's called Fire TV, right?
Fire.
Huh?
Fire.
On Fire TV, there is a Z series, ZTV. There are interviews. I think it's about 20 or 25 or 30 interviews which were conducted by Vivek Agnihotri, and we all helped him in meeting people and all the affected people who had gone through all this. So that is a wonderful, that series. I think anyone, if you can find it, you will get an idea you will know about Kashmir, from A to Z, everything. Not only about history, not only about the exodus, not only about the genocide, but each and everything that happened, you see that.
The personal stories, right?
Personal stories also, people who went through that whole thing. Beautiful job he has done. Agnihotri really did a great job.
This is our final question for the panel this evening. The title of our event today is Indigeneity Has No Expiration Date. Our audience has been able to hear from all three of you today about your personal experiences growing up in Kashmir, Kashmiri culture, and the 1990 exodus. If you could leave the audience with one takeaway about Kashmir and Kashmiri Pandits, what would it be? And it's open to everyone.
I start with
See, as I reflect of what has been the biggest loss for us, right? We lost our home, we've rebuilt our, right? We've lost economically, we have done well in life, we focused on education. But I think the biggest loss has been that thread, back to that thread, right? That discontinuity of thread of over 5,000 years of our civilization back to Kashmir. I mean, if you go back to the millennia, I mean, and this was not when I was growing up, when I started researching my own roots, and I was trying to say, okay, who am I? What's my real connection? And you'll see a lot of the ancient scholars, they came from Kashmir. The scholars of Kashmir have contributed to the world, to the Indian civilization phenomenon. Like some of the earliest scholars like Chavak, who's founder of Ayurveda, Panini, who is considered to be the greatest grammarian, Bharat Muni, he wrote Nashti Shastra, which is the basic of theatrics, and you have ton of these medieval. So it almost feels like, that is the biggest loss, right? So, the discontinuity and of that thousands of years, I think that is something that hits you the hardest. So I feel justice needs to prevail. Justice has not prevailed. And justice has to prevail on multiple levels. It needs to prevail at a political and judicial level. I mean, imagine a genocide of this scale happens and there are no court proceedings, there are no convicts. I mean, people like Bita Karate and Yasin Malik, they're not behind the bars for what they did to our community. There are petitions in the highest court and they just write it off. Hey, we don't have enough evidence against some of these acts of genocide. So something has to happen. Justice has not prevailed. Justice at a social level. I mean, a genocide of this scale happens and people out there say, hey, it was just a migration. We're still called migrants. We're not refugees. We are called migrants. And it was the state government who just engineered this. I mean, we don't have a feeling of revenge, but we need acknowledgement. Just acknowledge, yes, we messed up. It was not you. It was the generation, which was there and they were concerned. Just acknowledge, right? So social justice, economic justice. I mean, I was there in Jammu refugee camps visiting a few months back. I mean, it is so sad what has happened 1990. It has a multi-generational effect. I mean, this is a community, highly educated, very economically independent, and they're struggling to meet their ends meet. And CAVE as an organization, we have been working on multiple levels, multiple programs to support through scholarship, to support the medical emergencies, and, would welcome any support, but economic justice. So I think, justice needs to prevail at multiple levels. And my appeal to everybody here, be advocate for this justice. Thank you.
There's really nothing left to say after Uphaar has, said what he said, and all I can tell you is that it's very heartbreaking. Like, why isn't the government interested in this whole thing at all? Why do we have 50,000 people who are still in migrant camps in Jammu? You should see their condition. I mean, yeah, they're getting some allowance, but what does that do? What does that do to a culture? What does that do to, to a place, to a group of people who were innocent, who had nothing to do with this whole thing, and they got caught up in this militancy. They got caught up in, these Islamic, whatever goals they had. And these poor guys, for 35 years, I mean, somebody who was born that time is now 35 years old. And they're still there? Come on. I mean, the government, if anyone is listening, and again, I'm going to tell them what we have been saying for 35 years, that why are you not thinking about these people? Are they not human? Are they not Indians? Are they... Do you have no responsibility towards them? And all they're saying is that, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and nothing happens. You have, militancy still going on. Only a few months back, people were killed in Jammu, Kotru, somewhere, Kishtwar, wherever. It doesn't matter where, but, they were, again, innocent people, some children, some old peoples. They had just gone to, some pious place for worship, and they were coming back and they were shot. The government is not doing much about it. I do understand that, they have many problems and they're, definitely trying to make Kashmir safe, and Article 370, that was abrogated. That was a very, very wonderful thing that the Modi government did. And but that's fine. But what about these human beings who are suffering? So that is something that I urge, like Uphaar said, that everyone should advocate for these people. We should all be doing something to make sure that that these things don't happen again. They can happen anywhere. I mean, like right now they're saying Bengal and here and there. I mean, they're happening. and what happened in Bangladesh, what happens, elsewhere also. We know why, and we know who the people are, and we know what's going on. But the governments, have to be able to address these issues, because we as, activists, we as people who want to do something can only do this much. What can we do? We don't have anything in our hands where we can be able to, do anything better. But it's the governments, and so that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
So.
Like both of them, covered pretty much everything. So I'm just going to add just something personal then here. Continuing from 2020, my visit in Kashmir, like I said, it took me a while to get over it. There was like a hangover almost, and I spoke with and because of COVID, I got an opportunity to speak to a lot of locals who are Muslims, and I became kind of friends with them online, and we went on trips in the US, and I was really hoping for an acknowledgement from them personally, that, hey, that's right, what happened to you was kind of our fault also, because they didn't, as a majority community, protect us. So at the end of almost COVID, I realized that I'm alone in this. Yes, we speak the same language, and we have the same kind of localities that we live in, but we have a very large distance between us, which has been created by external factors, and it's very hard for me to believe, and now I have acknowledged the fact that I don't think I would be able to live in Kashmir again in these circumstances. And coming to the question that Aryan asked about indigeneity doesn't have an expiration date. Therefore, after Kashmir Files happened, and everybody was pretty much aware, and I got phone calls from my friends, childhood friends, saying that we did not know this happened to you. And there are people in the audience who are sitting here. I can see that we actually used to, during Ganpati Visarjan in Hyderabad, we used to distribute water bottles to the people there at the event, and give them a pamphlet to raise awareness. I'm talking about 2008, I think. And that's how desperate we were for people to get to know what happened to us. Just acknowledge, and what rightly Uphaar said, what the people here can do, or anywhere. If you find a person, Kashmiri Pandit or otherwise, any community, if they have gone through loss of home, loss of identity, acknowledge it. It's a very big thing. I think that's a very important thing for a person's healing. And it was a healing for my parents as well, to acknowledge if somebody else is acknowledging what has happened to you. I think that's very important. And, and then after Kashmir Files happened, I'm like, what am I going to do now with this journey? And what I did is that I started a book club, and I started reading more and more about Kashmir. And there is a paper I came across written by Dr. Subhash Kak, and if you want to Google it, it's available freely. It's called The Wonder That Was Kashmir. It actually tells you, it's almost like a crash course on the classical history of Kashmir. And it tells you that everything Hindu, Indian, from Natya Shastra to Sanskrit, to yoga, to Buddhism, to, there's business. Sharda Peeth was the center of that. Sharda Peeth was there was a place in Kashmir where people would come to learn about these aesthetics. Abhinav Gupta came to, write a research on Kashmiri Shaivism. So what I'm saying is that saving Kashmiri culture is not Kashmiri Pandits' responsibility. Why? Because it will help everybody. Everybody can help from it if you learn what actually there is to offer for anybody, Hindu or not. It's a very important place. It's a very important literature where you will take a lifetime to actually learn all of it. And I think that's what we should, if at all, take something out of here, that try to delve into it, try to learn more about it, just for your own transcendence and transformation. Thank you.
Really beautifully said. Okay. If you all have any questions for the speakers, you're welcome to ask them after the event and meet our speakers. We're going to close by having a current Kashmiri Pandit student at UC Berkeley deliver the closing remarks for today's event. Please welcome Isha.
Namaskar, everyone. My name is Isha Salman, and I firstly want to thank all of you for being here today. As a Kashmiri Pandit myself, I have tried in every single way to immerse myself in this wonderful and vibrant community. And before I start, I just want to share something that I felt listening to the speakers here today and to Drew's opening remarks. Sitting in the crowd here today, I got tears in my eyes because I've experienced something that I experienced last year when I visited Kashmir for the first time. When I walked into this room and I heard everyone speaking Kashmiri, seeing the dechors and the traditional wear, it made me feel emotional because I've never experienced that in common spaces. And especially in UC Berkeley, this is something that makes me extremely proud that we're being able to raise awareness for the Kashmiri Pandits. To each and every one of you who chose to spend your time learning about the history, resilience, and heartache of the Kashmiri Pandit community, your presence matters, and your willingness to listen matters. As a Kashmiri Pandit myself, I carry a truth that is often too easily dismissed and brushed away by words like propaganda, exaggeration, or convenient narratives. But our pain is not a headline, our exile is not fiction, and our resilience is not a myth. I want to deeply thank the brave speakers who stood before you today, those who bared their memories, who chose truth despite the weight of reliving it. I also want to extend a heartfelt thank you to CoHNA and CYAN for giving us this platform, something that Kashmiri Pandits are rarely given, a reflection of our painful exclusion from mainstream narratives. When our stories are silenced in textbooks, erased from history, and pushed out of conversations, this space becomes sacred and revolutionary. Growing up, I always felt a bit out of place when I stepped into brown spaces and realized that I was the only Kashmiri person there. Our community often exists in whispers and in fragments. We are scattered across continents, carrying generations of displacement in our bones, and yet we remain. One moment in particular shaped how I see my identity. I was at a mall with my family, just an ordinary day, when my father suddenly stopped walking. His eyes had locked onto another family, a mother, father, and their 2 sons. What made him stop wasn't their faces, rather it was the mother's earrings. She wore a deshwar, the sacred thread of gold that dangles from the ears of Kashmiri Pandit women. My father approached her gently and asked, "Does it chika kosher bolan?" Sorry, my Kashmiri is not very great, but it roughly translates to, "Do you speak Kashmiri?" It was such a small moment. 2 displaced families, meeting not on the soil of their homeland, but in the corridors of an American shopping mall. Yet in that moment, we weren't just immigrants or strangers, but we were a people, connected by a thread much stronger than gold. The dechor wasn't just jewelry. It was memory. It was legacy. It was resistance. That day taught me something, that even in exile, even after 7 generations of persecution, even with homes left in ashes and temples turned to ruins, we are still here. We are still Kashmiri, and we still remember. I used to be the girl that no one knew was Kashmiri. Now, all my friends say, Isha, you talk about Kashmir so much. And I smile every single time. Because if I don't tell our stories, then who will? If we don't speak now, when will the silence end? To all of you listening today, you are now a part of that story. You have heard our voices. You have witnessed our truth. And with that comes a responsibility. So here's what I ask of you. Don't let this be where it ends. Share what you learned today. Speak about Kashmiri Pandits in your communities, your schools, your homes. Elevate our stories when they are buried beneath noise. And most importantly, support the future of our community. Support the children in refugee camps who are still dreaming and believing that their stories matter. Educate others about what it means to be displaced, to be silenced, and to be resilient. We are working with grassroots organizations to fund educational programs for displaced Kashmiri Pandit children. If you feel moved, please consider donating. Even a small amount can change the trajectory of a child's life. Let today be the beginning of your solidarity, because our stories deserve power and action. And as long as the dead horse still dangles, not just from the ears of our mothers and grandmothers, but from ours, the daughters, who carry their strength forward. And as long as we remember the names of the villages that we can no longer return to, as long as we still speak Kashmiri, we will never be forgotten. We are not just survivors, we are storytellers. And today, you are part of our story too. So once again, thank you all for coming to this event. And I hope that you have all learned something today and will consider donating. Thank you.
I really got goosebumps when she spoke. And when Drew spoke, I had tears in my eyes. Thank you both. Thanks, Aryan. And thanks everyone for coming.